We are here with Michael Ortiz Hill, prolific author that I recently had the good opportunity to discover. He writes with a stream of consciousness that brings the past and the present, the future all into the same moment, which is an interesting process to read because suddenly you feel like you're reading the moment of your own mind. I felt like I had dived into my own mind, and yet it wasn't my mind, it was yours. And somehow there was a duality between your writing and my experience that was quite profound, even though our experience has been very diverse. It was so moving and so immediate that I wanted to be able to do this. So, Michael, you're telling us about the initiation in Africa.
Well, there were several initiations in Africa, and layer upon layer upon layer. It's so hard to articulate initiation, and it is a different culture. And again, the essential thing about being initiated through sacred illness, sacred illness is the gift of the ancestors. It means they are calling you to be a healer. And among other things, sacred illness undoes one's previous self. And like Mandaza Kandemwa in our book, Twin from Another Tribe, he talks about his experience with water spirit disease. Mandaza rose to the highest level of the Rhodesian, then the Zimbabwean National Police as a school teacher of children. And then he was taken by water spirit disease. He was a very religious Christian, but of course water spirit disease was pulling him into the pre-Christian way of understanding. And he fell to pieces. I mean, completely fell to pieces, and was virtually incapacitated in the ways that I was speaking about. That thing about having such empathy that you can't function. It's like you feel the suffering of the world, but you're not useful with it, especially because you're undone, you know. And he and I had a common language about water spirit disease, and he illuminated it for me as he was initiating me. But one allies with the spirit that is undoing you.
How strange. It's like creating an ally out of the enemy.
That's exactly.
And in Western medicine, we try to eradicate the enemy that's destroying us, and you're saying you befriend it.
Thank you. That is precisely it, and that is why the Ngoma, the water spirit, is both a peacemaking and a healing tradition. And it's peacemaking because the first enemy you make peace with is a spirit that is afflicting you. And I have to say, as you put it, of course I've been a nurse for 23 years, and I do know the war on cancer, the war on AIDS, the war on this, that, and the other thing. And I think it's deranged. And I see the victims of it. You know, if you're in the machinery of Western medicine, it's a dreadful thing to witness and participate in, God knows.
Do you think that the fear that the disease will conquer and render us to die makes us unwilling to surrender to the disease, as if that's a sure way to give it the power over us to cause our demise, and yet you're suggesting that we actually trust the disease to teach.
Well, that's exactly it. And you know, the thing about sacred illness, how do you say, it comes from God and it returns to God in this life or in the end of this life. And healing can mean either. It can mean death, in fact. And before I became a nurse because I worked hospice. I worked with death and dying. And sometimes healing is about death, physical death. The healing of initiation is about spiritual death. One is leaving behind a self. And, and MS it was rigorous that way. I have to say, it made my initiation in Africa feel like whatever. They're much easier, frankly.
Because the MS was so grueling.
It required that my whole concept of myself be undone.
Can you speak to that in terms of symptomatology?
Symptomology.
Symptomology. There you go.
Symptomology.
I was going to say symbology after that. There we go. But.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Well, number one, you have to understand, my first patient as a nurse had MS. Elsie.
Wow. Coincidental.
I was her nurse for 4 years at her bedside, doing night shift. It was a blessing. Basically, after nursing school, I went to the forest to meditate for 3 months. And I came out of the forest and said, oh, dear God, I don't want to work in a hospital. Please don't make me work in a hospital. So I got a job with Elsie. She had only control over her facial muscles. She was on a ventilator. And she and I became very good friends. We were very close. I learned to read her lips. And if she couldn't, if I wasn't getting a word, I'd take her off her vent, get an ambu bag and express a little air through her vocal cords so she could vocalize 1 or 2 words. One time I came to work and Elsie asked me how I was. And I said, oh, I feel a little depressed. And she said, why? And I said, life just seems sad to me sometimes. She said, I never feel sad. And I said, why is that, Elsie? People might think you'd be bitter. She'd been in bed for 30 years. And she said, I just don't let things bother me. And you see, I was meditating her bedside for 5 hours a night for months at then. I thought, this woman is crucified. She is Christ nailed to a diagnosis. And she popped that bottle quickly, I said, this is not a crucified woman. She knows she's loved. So MS, the losing use of my legs. I dropped out of being a floor nurse. I dropped out of nursing for 5 years because my legs were not reliable. I would fall on the street. I had to stop driving because I was having to lift up my leg in order to manipulate the gas pedal, the brake pedal. I started losing my eyesight. I started, God help me, Decadron, steroid therapy, which is common for MS, drove me out of my mind. I didn't sleep at 1 or 2 hours a night for 2 months. And you start unraveling, of course. The brilliant, extraordinary drug brought me my legs back, but drove me crazy.
Thank you, Michael.